Have you ever considered that invisible forces are shaping your destiny right now, determining not just what happens tomorrow but what will happen in your next life? What if ancient Tibetan masters discovered a sophisticated system of hidden energies flowing through your body at this very moment? Energies so subtle you can't see or touch them, yet so powerful they literally create the conditions for your rebirth after death? For over 1,000 years, Tibetan Buddhism has preserved secret teachings about the subtle body, an intricate network of energy channels, psychic winds, and consciousness centers that exists alongside your physical body, but operates according to entirely different laws. Today, we're unveiling how these hidden energies work, how they're influenced by every thought and action you take, and most importantly, how understanding and working with them can transform not only this life, but determine the quality of your existence beyond death. If you're ready to discover the invisible architecture of consciousness that's shaping your future across lifetimes, subscribe now and activate notifications because this journey into Tibetan wisdom will reveal forces influencing your destiny that you never knew existed. The foundation of Tibetan Buddhist energy work begins with understanding that you are not simply a physical body made of flesh, bones, and organs. According to teachings transmitted from Indian Tantric Buddhism into Tibet over a millennium ago, every human being possesses what's called a subtle body, an energetic structure that interpenetrates and extends beyond the physical form. This subtle body manifests as a supple network of energy channels called TSA in Tibetan or nadi in Sanskrit, pathways radiating from vertical channels in the spinal area and interlinking the entire body-mind system. These channels are not physical structures you can dissect or see under a microscope. They're subtle energetic pathways that exist at a level of reality finer than physical matter, yet more substantial than pure consciousness. Through these channels flow what Tibetan Buddhism calls lung, translated variously as winds, airs, or vital energies, known in Sanskrit as prana. The 14th Dalai Lama describes lung as subtle flows of energy that carry consciousness itself, explaining that consciousness rides on these energy winds the way a rider sits on a horse. Where the winds go, consciousness follows. When the winds are agitated and scattered, consciousness becomes disturbed and unfocused. When the winds are calm and gathered in specific locations, consciousness becomes clear, stable, and capable of penetrating the deepest truths of existence. Understanding and learning to work with these energy winds represents one of the most advanced and powerful practices in Tibetan Buddhism. Techniques usually reserved for serious practitioners who have completed preliminary training and received transmission from qualified masters. The entire system is governed by 3 primary vertical channels that run parallel to the spinal column. The central channel, called Uma in Tibetan or Sushumna in Sanskrit, travels from the base of the spine straight up toward the crown of the head. This is considered the most important channel because it's the pathway of spiritual awakening and liberation. To the left of the central channel runs the Ida or Kyangma, sometimes called the moon channel, which relates to emotions, desires, and connection with the past. To the right runs the Pingala or Roma, the sun channel, which governs action, planning, mental activity, and orientation toward the future. In the ordinary untrained person, energy winds constantly flow through the left and right channels, creating the familiar oscillation between emotional reactivity and aggressive striving, between dwelling in past memories and anxiously projecting into imagined futures. The central channel remains largely dormant, blocked by knots and constrictions that prevent energy from flowing there. Along the central channel exist focal points where numerous subsidiary channels branch off and converge, creating vortexes or concentrations of energy. These are the chakras, a Sanskrit word meaning wheels, so named because energy is said to spin at these points, rotating clockwise at specific frequencies. Different Tibetan Buddhist systems describe varying numbers of chakras, but the most common framework identifies 5 or 6 primary energy centers. At the crown of the head sits the crown chakra, associated with bliss and the purified element of space. At the forehead between the eyebrows is the forehead chakra, associated with enlightened mind and purified form. At the throat is the throat chakra, associated with speech and communication. At the heart center is the heart chakra, considered the most important, the seat of consciousness and the very subtlest mind that continues from life to life. At the navel is the navel chakra, associated with tummo or inner fire, the transformative heat that can burn away obscurations. And at the base of the spine or the perineum is the root chakra, associated with foundational stability and creative power. The Kala Chakra Tantra, one of the most sophisticated systems of energy work in Tibetan Buddhism, describes an even more elaborate structure with 6 primary chakras plus 12 secondary chakras located at the 12 major joints of the body, creating a total of 18 energy centers. Each primary chakra in the Kala Chakra system contains different numbers of channels radiating outward like petals of a lotus, with the crown having 4 petals, the forehead having 16, the throat 32, the heart 8, the navel 64, and the perineum 32. These numbers aren't arbitrary but correspond to cosmological principles, with the 12 secondary chakras representing the 12 months of the year, and the 30 petals in each representing the days in a month. The entire human energy system is thus understood as a microcosm, reflecting the macrocosmic structure of time, space, and consciousness itself. But here's where the teaching becomes intensely practical and directly relevant to the question of what determines your next life. According to the Kala Chakra system, the cooperative condition for uncontrollably recurring rebirth, the mechanism that keeps you trapped in the cycle of death and rebirth, is the coursing each day of 21,600 winds of karma through the energy channels of your subtle body. These karmic winds correspond to the 21,600 breaths that an average person takes per day. Each breath is not merely a mechanical exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, but a manifestation of karmic energy, the accumulated momentum of past actions ripening and propelling consciousness toward future experiences and future births. Think about that for a moment. Every single breath you take over 21,000 times per day carries karmic momentum that's shaping your destiny. The quality of these breaths, the channels they flow through, the states of mind that accompany them, all of this is literally determining where your consciousness will be reborn when this body dies. In the ordinary untrained state, these karmic winds flow chaotically through the left and right channels, never entering the central channel where they could be purified and transformed. As long as the winds remain in the side channels, consciousness remains bound to dualistic perception, to the endless oscillation between attachment and aversion, to the compulsive patterns that create suffering and perpetuate the cycle of rebirth. The practice objective in Tibetan Tantric Yoga is to reverse this situation, to draw the karmic winds out of the side channels and into the central channel, and then to dissolve them there through specific meditation techniques. When even a single karmic wind enters the central channel and dissolves, one moment of ordinary dualistic consciousness is replaced by one moment of blissful non-dual awareness, and the karmic propulsion toward uncontrolled rebirth is incrementally reduced. Advanced practitioners working with these techniques aim to stack what are called bodhicitta drops within the central channel at specific chakra locations. In Tibetan Buddhist physiology, bodhicitta drops are subtle essences, white drops inherited from the father that normally reside at the crown chakra, and red drops inherited from the mother that normally reside at the navel chakra. Through meditation practices involving breath control, visualization, and mantra recitation, the practitioner learns to cause these drops to move through the channels, creating specific experiences of bliss at different chakra locations that correspond to progressively subtler states of consciousness. With each moment of unchanging blissful awareness created through this process, one white and one red bodhicitta drop are stacked in the central channel, and one karmic wind is eradicated. Over months and years of intensive practice, thousands upon thousands of karmic winds are eliminated, literally burning away the fuel that would otherwise propel consciousness into another uncontrolled rebirth. This might sound abstract or esoteric, but the principle underlying it is actually quite straightforward. Every habitual pattern, every emotional reactivity, every compulsive behavior operates through the medium of these subtle energy winds. When anger arises, it's not just a mental event, but an energetic event, specific winds moving through specific channels, creating the felt sense of contraction, heat, and aggressive impulse. When craving arises, different winds move through different pathways, creating the experience of attraction, neediness, and compulsive reaching. When confusion or ignorance dominates consciousness, the winds become turbulent and scattered, unable to settle in any stable configuration. All of these energetic patterns accumulate over time, creating deeply grooved pathways that the winds habitually follow, and these habitual pathways constitute your karma, the invisible momentum carrying you toward specific types of experiences in this life and specific realms of rebirth in the next. Conversely, when you engage in virtuous actions, when you cultivate concentration and mental clarity through meditation, when you generate compassion and the aspiration to benefit others, you're creating different energetic patterns, training the winds to flow in ways that reduce suffering and increase wisdom. The texts describe how practices like shamatha meditation, calm abiding, naturally begin to calm and stabilize the energy winds, even without deliberately working with the channels and drops. As your mind becomes more concentrated and less distracted, the winds automatically become less turbulent. As you develop the capacity to rest attention on a chosen object without wavering, the winds begin to gather rather than scatter. And as concentration deepens through the 9 stages of mental abiding that we discussed in previous teachings, the winds progressively enter and remain in the central channel for longer periods, creating the foundation for liberating insights to arise. The most famous advanced practice for working directly with the subtle energy system is tummo, which translates as inner fire or fierce heat. Tummo is one of the 6 yogas of Naropa, a collection of advanced tantric techniques transmitted from the Indian master Naropa to the Tibetan translator Marpa, and passed down through the Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism for over 1,000 years. In tummo practice, the yogin or yogini uses specific breathing techniques combined with visualization and physical exercises to ignite a fierce heat at the navel chakra. This isn't merely metaphorical heat. Accomplished tummo practitioners can generate such intense physical warmth that they can sit naked in sub-zero temperatures melting snow around their bodies, a feat that has been scientifically documented and studied by researchers investigating the capacities of highly trained meditators. But the real purpose of tummo isn't to demonstrate exotic physical abilities or to stay warm without clothing. The fierce heat generated through tummo practice serves to melt the white and red drops, causing them to flow through the channels and inducing progressively deeper states of blissful awareness. As the drops melt and move, they create specific signs and experiences that the practitioner learns to recognize and work with skillfully. When the drops move to the crown chakra, bliss of great joy arises. When they descend to the throat chakra, supreme joy arises. At the heart chakra, the experience is called special joy. And when the drops reach the navel chakra, the practitioner experiences innate joy, the subtlest and most profound blissful awareness that provides the optimal mental state for realizing emptiness, the ultimate nature of reality. The reason this matters for understanding rebirth is that the state of mind at the moment of death determines the quality of the bardo experience and the nature of the next rebirth. For an ordinary person, death occurs with consciousness confused, scattered, grasping desperately at the dissolving body and familiar identity, completely unable to navigate the disorienting transition with clarity. The energy winds during ordinary death follow their habitual patterns of karma, propelling consciousness willy-nilly toward whatever realm corresponds to the dominant mental afflictions of that lifetime. But for a practitioner highly trained in working with the subtle energy system, death becomes an unparalleled opportunity. The dissolution of the elements that occurs naturally at death parallels the dissolution that advanced meditators learn to induce voluntarily during tummo and other completion stage practices. The appearance of the white, red, and black visions that occur as consciousness separates from the body is something the trained practitioner has experienced hundreds or thousands of times in meditation. And most importantly, the clear light that dawns at the moment of death, the most subtle consciousness freed from all conceptual elaboration, is something the advanced practitioner recognizes immediately because they've trained in recognizing that same clear light during life. When an accomplished master dies with this level of preparation, several extraordinary possibilities become available. If the recognition of clear light at death is stable and complete, full enlightenment can be achieved right at that moment with no need for any bardo experience or future rebirth. The cycle of samsara simply ends, Consciousness merges with absolute reality, and the individual becomes a fully awakened Buddha. Alternatively, if complete enlightenment doesn't occur but the practitioner maintains significant awareness and control during the dying process, and the Bardo states, they can consciously choose the circumstances of their next rebirth rather than being driven there involuntarily by karma. This is how the system of reincarnate lamas operates in Tibetan Buddhism. A highly realized master deliberately takes rebirth, often leaving clear instructions about where and when they'll be born, maintaining continuity of consciousness across the death transition, and manifesting extraordinary signs and abilities from early childhood that confirm their identity as the rebirth of a previous master. The Tibetan Buddhist teachings on subtle energy also explain phenomena that might otherwise seem mysterious or impossible. The concept of lung disturbance, for example, describes conditions that arise when the energy winds become seriously imbalanced through excessive meditation practice without proper guidance, through traumatic experiences that shock the subtle body, or through certain physical and environmental factors. When lung becomes disturbed, consciousness becomes highly unstable, anxiety and agitation increase dramatically, sleep becomes disrupted, and in severe cases, actual psychological breakdown can occur. Western medicine might diagnose such conditions as anxiety disorders, panic attacks, or even psychotic episodes. But from the Tibetan perspective, the root cause is energetic imbalance in the subtle body that then manifests as mental and physical symptoms. Treatment involves practices specifically designed to rebalance the winds, bringing them back to stable circulation through appropriate channels. Chokni Rinpoche, a contemporary Tibetan Buddhist master known for his teachings on lung disturbances and their remedies, explains that the thiel, the luminous essence drops that circulate within the channels, move because of the subtle energy or inner wind called lung. A certain amount of lung is a normal part of the subtle body, necessary for life and consciousness, but disturbances in the wind energy can get intensified through meditation practice when practitioners push too hard without proper foundation, manifesting negatively at the level of feelings with increased anxiety, emotional volatility, and loss of groundedness. This is why authentic Tibetan Buddhist training always emphasizes gradualism, proper sequencing of practices, and the necessity of working under the guidance of qualified teachers who can recognize when a student is ready for advanced energy practices and when they need to focus on stabilizing foundational practices first. The implications of understanding subtle energies extend far beyond esoteric meditation techniques. Every single moment of your life, you're conditioning your energy body through your thoughts, emotions, speech, and actions. When you indulge in anger, you're not just having an unpleasant mental experience that will pass, you're actually creating grooves in your energy channels that make anger more likely to arise in the future. You're training the karmic winds to flow in patterns that lead toward rebirth in realms characterized by aggression and conflict. When you cultivate compassion, you're not merely having nice feelings or being a good person, you're restructuring your subtle body, training the winds to flow in patterns associated with enlightened activity, creating momentum toward rebirth in favorable circumstances where you'll have the opportunity to continue developing spiritually and benefiting others. The teaching on the three main channels corresponding to past orientation, future orientation, and present-centered balance provides a particularly useful framework for daily life. When you notice your mind dwelling on past events, reliving old conversations, stewing over previous injuries or losses, you're activating the left channel, the emotional, lunar, past-oriented energy. When you catch yourself constantly planning, strategizing, anxiously projecting into imaginary futures, worrying about what might happen, you're activating the right channel, the action-oriented, solar, future-directed energy. Neither of these is inherently bad, but when all your energy remains trapped in one or both side channels oscillating between past and future, you're never fully present, never accessing the centered awareness that exists beyond time and dualistic thought. The practice of meditation, understood energetically, is the practice of training attention to settle in the central channel, to rest in the present moment where consciousness naturally abides when not pulled into past or future by karmic winds. As you meditate regularly, the winds gradually stop swinging from left to right, from past to future, and settle into the central channel. Your attention becomes centered. You exist more fully in the present moment, and you experience genuine inner peace and joy that doesn't depend on external circumstances. This isn't merely psychological shift, but actual energetic transformation, the subtle body restructuring itself through the power of sustained meditative attention. The relationship between breath and consciousness provides another accessible entry point into working with subtle energies. Every breath you take moves not just physical air in and out of the lungs, but also subtle lung through the energy channels. By bringing awareness to breathing, by working with breath in specific ways, you can directly influence the quality and movement of the subtle winds. Simple mindfulness of breathing naturally begins to calm and regulate the energy system. More advanced practices like vase breathing, where you imagine drawing breath down into a vase-like container at the navel, holding it there, and then slowly releasing it, directly work with gathering energy at specific chakra locations. Alternate nostril breathing, where you block one nostril and breathe through the other, is understood to control which side channel is active, allowing you to deliberately shift energy from left to right or right to left depending on what balance you want to create. The dissolution of elements during death that we touched on earlier reveals another crucial understanding about subtle energies. The Tibetan Buddhist description of how earth dissolves into water, water into fire, fire into air, and air into consciousness isn't merely symbolic poetry, but describes actual energetic processes. Each element corresponds to specific qualities of the energy winds and specific locations in the subtle body. Earth element, characterized by solidity and stability, resides primarily in the lower body and is associated with yellow color and square forms. Water element, characterized by cohesion and fluidity, resides in the body's liquids and is associated with white color and circular forms. Fire element, characterized by heat and transformation, resides in the digestive system and metabolic processes and is associated with red color and triangular forms. Air element, characterized by movement and expansion, resides in the respiratory and circulatory systems and is associated with green color and crescent forms. When these elements dissolve during death, the process follows a specific sequence that consciousness experiences through distinct signs and visions. As earth dissolves into water, the body loses structural integrity. You feel heavy and sinking, and the external sign is that your reflection appears unclear or distorted in mirrors. As water dissolves into fire, all liquids dry up, the mouth becomes parched, and the external sign is that steam or vapor appears to rise from the body. As fire dissolves into air, bodily warmth withdraws from the extremities toward the heart center, and the external sign is flickering vision like sparks or fireflies. As air dissolves into consciousness, breathing becomes irregular and finally ceases, and the external sign is wavering vision like a candle flame blown by wind. Then consciousness itself goes through progressive dissolutions, experiencing white vision like moonlight, red vision like sunset, black vision like unconsciousness, and finally the clear light of death. What makes this relevant to understanding hidden energies influencing your next life is recognizing that the exact same dissolution sequence can be trained for and experienced during advanced meditation practice while you're still alive. Through tummo and other completion stage practices, you learn to voluntarily dissolve the elements, to cause the energy winds to withdraw from the side channels and enter the central channel, to experience the white, red, and black visions, and most importantly, to recognize and rest in the clear light awareness that ordinarily only appears at death. By training in this process hundreds or thousands of times during life, you're preparing for the single most important moment you'll ever face, the moment when death actually arrives, and everything depends on your capacity to remain aware and recognize the clear light, rather than fainting into unconsciousness and being swept involuntarily into a new rebirth by karmic momentum. The teaching on the 5 Buddha families provides another layer of understanding about how subtle energies shape consciousness and rebirth. According to Vajrayana Buddhism, the 5 primary afflictive emotions, ignorance, anger, pride, attachment, and jealousy, are not enemies to be destroyed, but rather confused forms of 5 types of primordial wisdom. Ignorance, when purified, becomes the wisdom of Dharma Dhatu, the all-encompassing space of reality. Anger, when purified, becomes mirror-like wisdom, clearly reflecting things as they are without distortion. Pride, when purified, becomes the wisdom of equanimity, seeing the fundamental equality of all beings and phenomena. Attachment, when purified, becomes discriminating wisdom, clearly perceiving distinctions without grasping. And jealousy, when purified, becomes all-accomplishing wisdom, effortlessly fulfilling all intentions. Each of these wisdoms is associated with one of the 5 Buddha families, with specific colors, directions, elements, and locations in the subtle body. Vairochana Buddha family, white and associated with the center and the element of space, represents the purification of ignorance into Dharmadhatu wisdom. Akshobhya Buddha family, blue and associated with the east and the element of water, represents the purification of anger into mirror-like wisdom. Ratnasambhava Buddha family, yellow and associated with the south and the element of earth, represents the purification of pride into equanimity wisdom. Amitabha Buddha family, red and associated with the west and the element of fire, represents the purification of attachment into discriminating wisdom. Amoghasiddhi Buddha family, green and associated with the north and the element of air, represents the purification of jealousy into all-accomplishing wisdom. When you die, the energy winds associated with whichever affliction has been dominant in your life will be strongest, propelling consciousness toward experiences and rebirths that correspond to that Buddha family in its confused or purified form. If anger has been your dominant pattern, your consciousness at death and in the bardo will encounter manifestations related to Akshobhya's mandala, experienced as terrifying, wrathful deities if you don't recognize their true nature, or as purified, mirror-like wisdom if you do. Understanding the system allows you to work consciously during life with whatever affliction is most active for you, not trying to suppress it, but rather learning to see through its confused manifestation to the wisdom that underlies it, thereby transforming the very energies that would otherwise drag you into suffering rebirths. The practice of deity yoga, central to Tibetan Buddhist Tantra, works directly with subtle energy transformation. When you visualize yourself as a deity, you're not engaging in fantasy or pretending to be something you're not. You're deliberately restructuring the energies of your subtle body according to an enlightened template. Each deity represents a specific configuration of purified energy, with particular colors at particular chakra locations, specific hand gestures and implements that symbolize different aspects of enlightened activity, and complete mandala environments that represent the pure dimension of awakened reality. By training repeatedly in dissolving your ordinary self-image and reconstituting yourself as the deity, by visualizing the channels, chakras, and drops of the deity's subtle body rather than your own ordinary energy configuration, you're quite literally reprogramming your subtle body at the deepest level, replacing afflicted karmic patterns with enlightened ones. The ultimate goal of all this energy work isn't merely to have interesting experiences or to develop extraordinary abilities, though those can arise as side effects. The goal is liberation, the complete and permanent freedom from uncontrolled rebirth and all suffering. And liberation occurs through the union of method and wisdom, skillful means and direct realization of emptiness. The subtle body practices provide the method side, the means of gathering energy at specific locations where consciousness can be made extremely subtle, clear, and blissful. The wisdom side involves using that subtly blissful consciousness to realize emptiness, the ultimate nature of reality in which all phenomena, including the practitioner's own mind, are seen to be empty of inherent existence, arising only through interdependent causes and conditions. When these two come together, when the very subtlest mind riding on the very subtlest wind realizes emptiness directly and completely, that is full enlightenment. At that moment, all karmic winds are exhausted, all diluted energy patterns dissolve, and consciousness becomes inseparable from ultimate reality itself. There is no more compulsive rebirth because there is no more ignorance driving the winds through the channels. The subtle body, as we've been discussing it, still functions in one sense. The enlightened being still manifests form and can appear to others, but all the afflicted patterns have been completely purified and replaced with enlightened activity that spontaneously benefits beings without any sense of separate self doing the benefiting. For those of us who are nowhere near that level of realization, the teaching on hidden energies still offers immense practical value. It reveals that we're not helpless victims of karma, not predetermined by past actions to experience specific futures we can't change. Every moment presents an opportunity to work with energy, to shift patterns, to create new momentum. Every breath you take can be taken with awareness, transforming it from an unconscious karmic wind into a conscious vehicle for accumulating positive energy. Every emotion that arises can be related to skillfully, not indulged unconsciously nor suppressed violently, but felt fully while recognizing its empty nature, allowing the energy to move through and dissolve naturally, rather than creating deep karmic grooves. The hidden energies influencing your next life are not really hidden at all. They're operating right now in every thought, every feeling, every breath, every action. You're shaping your future constantly, building the subtle body configuration that will determine your experience when this body dies, and consciousness enters the bardo, seeking a new birth. The question is whether you'll do this consciously, deliberately training the winds and drops through meditation and ethical living, or unconsciously, simply repeating the same reactive patterns that have driven you through countless previous lives. Tibetan Buddhism offers a choice and provides detailed instructions for how to exercise that choice with wisdom and skill. So what resonates most deeply with you from this exploration of hidden energies? Does understanding the subtle body change how you think about breath, about emotions, about what's actually happening when you meditate? Can you feel, even subtly, the truth of energy moving through channels in your body? The difference between scattered, distracted energy and gathered, focused energy? Share your reflections and experiences in the comments below. If this teaching has opened your eyes to the invisible forces shaping your destiny across lifetimes, hit that like button to help more people discover this profound wisdom. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now and activate notifications, because we're continuing to explore the deepest and most transformative teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, revealing the practical methods for liberation that have been preserved for over 1,000 years. Share this video with anyone seeking to understand what really determines their future. Anyone interested in meditation and energy work. Anyone who wants to take conscious control of forces that otherwise operate invisibly, determining their destiny. Together, we're building a community of practitioners committed to waking up and transforming the very energies that create our experience across lifetimes. Thank you for this journey into the subtle realms where consciousness and energy intertwine to shape all of existence. Until next time, may your winds flow in channels of wisdom and your consciousness ride toward complete awakening.